You can take the blue pill and continue to wrestle with the traditional 66-book Bible. You will continue trying to reconcile the irreconcilable. You will continue having to force yourself to believe in things that feel wrong because you're told they are right. And you will continue accepting that Bible contradictions are divine mystery. Or you can take the red pill and see the New Testament canon for what it truly is, two conflicting messages bound together. If you stay with me, you'll see how deep the rabbit hole really goes. You'll discover the authentic and cohesive voice of the Apostolic Scriptures and the LOGOS Bible. The choice is yours.
Last week, I promised you a paradigm shift that would solve important biblical contradictions forever. Today, I'm asking you to think about the choice between taking a red pill or a blue pill when it comes to your faith. Confused? Don't be. Stay tuned. Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Late Nights with Dr. C. I'm Dr. Ufaro Celestin, and this is the moment we've all been waiting for. It's part 2 of our Bible contradictions conversation, which I'm calling the LOGOS Bible's Red Pill Moment. Interesting title. Last week we talked about the impossible problem of Bible contradictions. We talked about the burnout, the crisis of faith, and the intellectual gymnastics required to defend the indefensible. And I asked you a simple question. What if these contradictions aren't problems to solve, but clues pointing us towards something we haven't understood correctly? Okay, for those who weren't here with us last week, let's do a brief recap of last week's conversation so that we're all on the same page. I said, instead of trying to decide if James is correct or if Paul is correct, when they disagree about whether the road to salvation goes through faith alone or faith and works, instead of trying to decide why a Trinity doctrine was never taught in the Old Testament or by any of Jesus's 12 apostles, in fact, instead of us asking inconvenient questions like who actually wrote our New Testament books and why should I trust people that Jesus never commissioned to speak for him? I said to you last week that these Bible contradictions are not problems to solve. We need to start seeing these contradictions as clues pointing us towards something really important. I ended last week's episode with a promise of a paradigm shift, and I challenged you to get ready for it. Well, here we are. How many of you have ever seen the movie The Matrix? You know, the movie that starred Keanu Reeves as Neo and Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus. If you have, then you'll understand the analogy that I'm about to use. For 2,000 years, sincere believers have been handed a system, a theological matrix. And in that system, there are two pills. There is a blue pill and a red pill. The blue pill is the one most people swallow. You take the blue pill and the story ends. You wake up in your church pew on Sunday and you believe whatever you're told. You accept that James and Paul must somehow be teaching us the same thing, even though their words plainly conflict. You accept that an eyewitness like Matthew needed to copy from a non-eyewitness like Mark. Remember the absurd name they gave it, Markan Priority? I told you that last week. Yeah, right. This is completely unacceptable. And you even accept that when you can't explain something, the answer is a mysterious Q source that no one has ever seen. Taking the blue pill means you spend the rest of your life doing theological gymnastics. It means telling your children it's divine mystery when they ask you logical questions and you don't have logical answers for them. It means accepting that the Bible is in conflict. It means accepting that God's divinely inspired word has contradictions. Or there's another choice, the red pill. Now, the red pill doesn't give you a complicated new theology. It gives you one simple, devastatingly logical question, a question that has been hidden in plain sight all along. Folks, let me tell you something. When you take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I'll show you how deep this rabbit hole goes. Are you ready? Here's the question. What if we decided to only accept as authoritative scripture in the New Testament the writings of the men Jesus Christ personally commissioned to speak for him? Yeah, that's it. That's the paradigm shift. It's so simple. You're probably saying to yourself, why didn't I think of that? Think about it. If you're going to base your entire life and then your entire eternity on a set of writings, wouldn't you want them to come from the primary sources, from the eyewitnesses, from the men who could say, yeah, I was there, I walked with him, he laid his hands on me and commissioned me to bear witness? Of course you would. And that's exactly what the earliest believers did. They focused on the writings of Matthew, John, Peter, James, and Jude, the inner circle. And when you make that choice, when you decide to listen only to those authentic, commissioned, apostolic voices, something miraculous happens. The matrix dissolves. The Bible contradictions disappear. The message becomes crystal clear. Suddenly, James's statement that faith without works is dead is in perfect harmony with Peter's epistles. And Matthew's record of Jesus commanding us to keep the commandments is in perfect harmony with John's letters about obedience. There is no conflict on salvation because you're no longer trying to force the apostolic message to agree with Paul's message. So, welcome to the Apostolic Scriptures. It is the original, cohesive, and contradiction-free message of the New Testament. It's 10 books, one clear voice. The Gospels of Matthew and John, the epistles of James, Peter, John, and Jude, the book of Revelation. Really, that's it. 10 books, the Apostolic Scriptures. And when you add the Apostolic Scriptures to the Old Testament, do you know what you get? The LOGOS Bible. That's the complete paradigm shift, a 49-book LOGOS Bible. And by the way, before you skeptics jump all over me, because I can hear you, and tell me that 2 of his apostles did not even write the epistles named after them, I want to tell you 2 things. One is about James, and the other is about Jude. First, no one has proved beyond a reasonable doubt that the James who wrote the Epistle of James wasn't either of the 2 James named in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 10, as Christ's apostles. The first James, as you know, was the son of Zebedee and the brother of John. There was also James, the son of Alphaeus. Some Bible scholars prefer to bypass these 2 apostles and claim instead that the James who wrote the epistle was Jesus' half-brother. But this is not supported by Christ's own testimony, and I can prove it. What did Christ say? You have to reread the story given in Matthew chapter 12, verses 46 to 50 to understand this. Do you remember that Jesus' mother and brothers came to visit him while he was preaching? And somebody told Jesus that his mother and brothers wanted to speak with him. What did he say? How did he respond? Well, I'm going to read that passage to you from the King James Version. But he answered and said unto him that told him, Who is my mother? And who are my brethren? And he stretched forth his hand towards his disciples and said, Behold, my mother and my brethren, for whosoever shall do the will of my Father, which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother. It is much more likely, in my opinion, that a person who was an active believer and follower of Christ's mission would be able to write the James epistle, to suggest, therefore, that his half-brother, who, by the way, never appears in the apostolic scriptures except for that one Matthew chapter 12 reference, could be the author of the James epistle, to my mind, is beyond belief. And second, Labius Thaddeus, who is mentioned as one of Christ's 12 apostles in the Gospel of Matthew, had alias names. Most people don't realize that. He was also known as Judas Thaddeus, Jude of James, and Labius Thaddeus. This 10th apostle, therefore, Jude, is the person who wrote the Jude epistle. And if you need any more proof of the first century existence of an apostolic scriptures, here it is. Did you know that in 2023, a scientist called Dr. Gregory Kessel uncovered parts of the 11th and 12th chapters of the Gospel of Matthew, which was written in ancient Syriac Aramaic, the language of Christ's apostles? But that's not the amazing thing. What was amazing about his discovery is that this Kessel undertext was discovered written underneath the Greek text of the Codex Sinaiticus. Do you know how amazing this information is? The Codex Sinaiticus, also called the Sinai Bible, was previously assumed to be the world's oldest Bible manuscript. However, Kessel's discovery adds to the evidence that the original apostolic gospels were written in the Aramaic language and at a much earlier time than the Greek Bible manuscripts written by non-apostles like Paul. So folks, my little theological detour aside, this red pill, blue pill situation isn't just about winning an academic theological argument. When you take the red pill, it will have profound practical consequences. Let's look at a major Bible contradiction as an example. Faith versus works. Now, in the blue pill world, you have to perform mental contortions to make James and Paul agree. But in the red pill world of the apostolic scriptures and the LOGOS Bible, the solution is instant. You simply accept what the commissioned apostles unanimously teach. A living faith is an acting faith. The debate is over. You're now free from that contradiction and you can focus on what really matters, living out your faith. And that clarity, that freedom applies to everything. So here is my challenge to you, now that you understand the stakes. I am offering you the choice. You can take the blue pill, go back to the confusion, go back to defending the indefensible. The choice is yours, and you'll find no judgment here. Or you can take the red pill. Try it. Try it for just 1 week. I want you to read only from the 10 books of the apostolic scriptures. Experience the clarity for yourself. Because once you see this new reality, you can't unsee it. Once you experience the clarity of the authentic message, you'll never be able to go back to the theological gymnastics again. So what will you do? Are you going to take the blue pill or the red pill? Let me know in the comments below. Folks, I do this podcast for the reconstructors out there. What is a reconstructor? These are the people who, like myself, have already deconstructed. We left mainstream evangelical Christianity behind because of its theological, intellectual, and moral problems. But we're also dismayed at the burn it all down approach of some in the deconstructioning faith community. It's empty, it's unsatisfying, and even troubling. Most reconstructors have reached a point in their spiritual journey where they find themselves asking, okay, what's next? Why? Because they crave a return to a logical, theologically sound, and robust spiritual framework, and they know the old system can't give them this, will never give them this. So I think it's a great thing that we now have the Logos Bible to use as that theological framework. That's it for tonight. Thank you for taking this journey with me. This has been your host, Dr. C, and I'll see you next week further down the rabbit hole.